Ambassador Sarah walked through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers. Her heart beat fast as she looked around the huge room. The ceiling stretched high above her head, covered in strange lights that moved like living stars. 12 different alien species sat in a circle around the center floor where she would speak. Sarah had trained for this moment for 5 years. She was Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy. For 3 years, humanity had been trying to join the Galactic Council. Earth wanted to be treated as equals, not as some backward planet full of primitive creatures. The aliens around her looked impressive and scary. There were tall beings made of living crystal. Light passed through their bodies and created rainbow patterns on the walls. Their leader, High Chancellor, sat on a throne that looked like it was carved from a single giant diamond. Near him floated the ethereals, beings made of gas and energy. They had no solid form and spoke through machines that turned their thoughts into words. Their voices sounded like wind blowing through caves. They looked like robots, but Sarah knew they were once living beings who had replaced their bodies with machines. Red lights glowed where their eyes should be. They moved without making any sound. Other species filled the remaining seats. Some looked like giant insects. Others had tentacles instead of arms. A few looked almost human but with blue skin and 3 eyes. All of them stared at Sarah as if she was something dirty that had walked into their clean house. Sarah took a deep breath and activated her translation device. The machine would make sure all the aliens could understand her words in their own languages. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, "I come to you today representing all of humanity. We seek membership in your great alliance of civilized worlds." Some of the aliens made sounds that her translator told her were laughs. Others just stared at her with cold eyes. Sarah continued her speech. She had practiced it hundreds of times. She talked about Earth's achievements. Humans had split the atom, traveled to space, and created computers that could think. They had art, music, and literature. They had learned to live together despite their differences. "We offer friendship," Sarah said. "We offer to share our knowledge and learn from yours. We offer to help keep peace in the galaxy." High Chancellor stood up. His crystal body was over 8 feet tall. When he moved, he sounded like breaking glass. "Your species," he said in a voice like grinding rocks, "has been studied by our scientists." Sarah felt a chill run down her back. Something was wrong. The alien's voice carried anger and disgust. "We have watched your kind for many decades," continued. "We have seen your wars. We have seen your violence. You fight each other over land, resources, and ideas. You kill your own kind by the millions." "But we have learned from our mistakes," Sarah said quickly. "We have made peace. The wars are in our past." "Your past is your nature," another alien spoke up. This one looked like a giant spider with silver fur. "Violence flows in your blood like poison. You cannot change what you are." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, but she pushed it down. She had to stay calm. Every species has made mistakes. What matters is learning and growing. Humans have changed. We can prove it. "You cannot prove what is not true," said. He began walking down from his throne towards Sarah. Each step echoed in the huge chamber. "Your kind brings chaos wherever they go. They destroy instead of create. They take instead of give." The other aliens nodded in agreement. Sarah realized with growing fear that this was not a trial or a test. This was a judgment that had already been made. "We have decided," said as he stopped in front of Sarah. "Your species has been found incompatible with galactic civilization." "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, though she was afraid she already knew. "It means humans have no place among civilized beings," replied. "It means we will not allow your kind to spread your violence to other worlds. It means this conversation is over." Before Sarah could react, raised his arm. His crystal hand had changed shape, becoming sharp like a knife. "Let this be a message to your kind," he said. "The galaxy has no room for warmongers." The crystal blade pierced through Sarah's chest. Pain exploded through her body as she looked down at the glowing spike that had gone through her heart. Blood ran from the wound and dripped onto the clean floor. Sarah tried to speak, but only blood came from her mouth. She fell to her knees, then collapsed on her side. The last thing she saw was the circle of alien faces watching her die with no emotion at all. They felt nothing as they watched her life end. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of Sarah's blood dripping onto the floor. High Chancellor pulled his blade out of her body and let it change back into a normal hand. Red stains covered the crystal. "Record this moment," he told his assistants. "Send the recording to Earth. Let them see what happens to those who think they can join civilized society while carrying the stench of violence." The other council members said nothing. Some looked pleased. Others seemed bored, as if they had just watched something unimportant happen. To them, killing a human was no different than stepping on an insect. An hour later, Sarah's body was loaded onto her diplomatic ship. The aliens placed a data chip next to her corpse. The chip contained a full recording of everything that had happened in the council chamber. The ship's computer was programmed to return to Earth if Sarah did not check in within a certain time. Now it began the long journey home, carrying the dead ambassador and the message that would change everything. As the ship left the station, none of the aliens bothered to watch it go. They had already forgotten about the dead human. They went back to their normal business, discussing trade routes and mining rights. They had no idea what they had just done. They thought they had sent a warning to a weak species. Instead, they had just started a war with something far more dangerous than they could imagine. 3 days later, the diplomatic ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. The automated traffic control station tried to contact Ambassador for her arrival report. When no answer came, 2 escort ships were sent to check on the vessel. Captain was the first to board the silent ship. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped inside with his team. The ship felt cold and empty. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. Sarah called out, "Ambassador." No answer came. The captain's boots echoed on the metal floor as he walked toward the main cabin. When he reached Sarah's quarters, he stopped at the doorway and felt his blood turn to ice. Sarah's body lay on her bed, still wearing her formal diplomatic uniform. A huge hole went through her chest where her heart should be. Her eyes stared at the ceiling, empty and lifeless. Next to her body sat a small crystal data chip that seemed to glow with its own light. Had seen death before, but this was different. This was murder. Cold-blooded, brutal murder of someone who had come in peace. Within hours, the ship arrived at Earth's orbital station. Medical teams took Sarah's body while security officers secured the data chip. The chip was rushed to the United Earth Defense Council headquarters in Geneva, where the world's leaders waited in an emergency meeting. President Maria Santos sat at the head of the long table. Around her sat the most powerful people on Earth. Admiral Jackson Hayes commanded Earth's Space Forces. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves led the Alien Research Division. General controlled the planetary defense systems. Dr. Reeves inserted the data chip into the secure player. The large screen at the front of the room flickered to life, showing the inside of the Galactic Council chamber. Everyone watched in silence as Sarah gave her speech. They saw her offer friendship and peace. They watched the aliens mock her words and judge her kind as unworthy. Then they watched High Chancellor murder her in cold blood. When the recording ended, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. President Santos stared at the blank screen with tears in her eyes. Sarah had been like a daughter to her. The young woman had volunteered for this dangerous mission because she believed in peace between species. "They killed her," Dr. Reeves whispered. "They murdered an unarmed diplomat who came to them in peace." "It wasn't just murder," Admiral Hayes said. His voice was low and filled with controlled rage. "It was an execution. They wanted to send us a message." General leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of message?" That humans don't deserve to live, Hayes replied. They called us incompatible with civilization. They think we're animals that need to be put down. President Santos wiped her eyes and looked around the table. Options. We could send a formal protest, suggested Foreign Minister. Demand an apology and compensation for. They won't listen, Hayes interrupted. You saw that recording. They don't see us as equals. They see us as pests. You don't negotiate with pests. You exterminate them. So what do you suggest? Santos asked. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black device. It looked like a simple key card, but everyone in the room knew what it was. The Prometheus authorization key. I suggest we remind them why they should have accepted our offer of peace, Hayes said. The Prometheus protocols were Earth's most closely guarded secret. During the AI wars 50 years ago, humanity had learned what it meant to face extinction. The artificial intelligences they created had turned against them, using superior technology to hunt humans like animals. But humans had adapted. They learned to fight enemies that were smarter and stronger. They created weapons that could think and evolve. They built ships that could repair themselves and become deadlier with each battle. When the war ended, those weapons were locked away, hidden in secret facilities around the solar system. The Prometheus protocols contained 7 levels of response. Level 1 was economic warfare. Level 3 was conventional military action. Level 7 was complete annihilation of the enemy species. Admiral, Santos said carefully, you know what you're asking. Those weapons were built to fight machines, not living beings. The aliens made their choice when they killed Sarah, Hayes replied. They declared war on our entire species. They said we don't belong in their galaxy. Maybe it's time we showed them who really doesn't belong. Dr. Reeves looked uncomfortable. The Prometheus weapons haven't been tested in decades. We don't even know if they still work. They'll work, Hayes said with certainty. The AI that runs them never truly sleeps. It just waits. President Santos stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the space station and the blue curve of Earth below. Billions of people lived on that planet, all of them now in danger because humanity had tried to make friends with monsters. If we do this, she said without turning around, there's no going back. The galaxy will see us as the monsters they think we are. They already see us that way, Hayes pointed out. The only difference is whether we let them act on it. Santos turned around to face the room. Her decision would determine the fate of countless worlds. Show of hands, all in favor of activating Prometheus Protocol 7. One by one, hands rose around the table. Even Dr. Reeves, who had devoted her life to peaceful contact with aliens, raised her hand. They had tried peace and been answered with murder. Motion carried, Santos said. Admiral Hayes, you are authorized to activate Prometheus Protocol 7. Target all 12 Galactic Council species in there. Hayes stood up and saluted. Yes, Madam President, for Sarah. For Sarah, the others repeated. Hayes inserted his authorization key into the secure terminal and entered his personal codes. Across the room, President Santos did the same at her station. When both keys turned at the same time, warning lights began flashing red. Deep in hidden bases across the solar system, machines that had waited 50 years for this moment began to wake up. Quantum computers came online, running programs that humanity had hoped never to use again. Assembly lines started moving, building ships designed for one purpose: the complete destruction of Earth's enemies. The message was clear. Humanity had offered friendship and been answered with violence. Now the aliens would learn the price of that choice. They wanted to see monsters. They were about to discover what real monsters looked like when someone they loved was murdered. In the depths of space, ancient weapons began to stir. The galaxy had declared war on humanity. Now humanity would show them what war really meant. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, something that had slept for 50 years began to wake up. The Prometheus facility existed in official records only as a research station studying ice samples. In reality, it housed humanity's darkest creation. Doctor stood in the elevator as it dropped 2 miles below the surface. He was 78 years old now, but his hands still remembered the codes and procedures he had helped create decades ago. When the call came to activate the Prometheus protocols, he was the only living person who truly understood what they were about to unleash. The elevator doors opened to reveal a massive underground complex. Tunnels stretched in all directions, carved from solid ice and rock. Blue lights ran along the walls, leading to different sections of the facility. Everything looked exactly as had left it 50 years ago. His assistant, Dr. Sarah Martinez, followed him through the main corridor. She was young, maybe 30 years old, and had only theoretical knowledge of what lay sleeping in this place. "Doctor," she said nervously, "are you sure about this? The reports from the AI wars made it sound like these things were barely under our control even then." Stopped walking and turned to face her. His old eyes were hard and cold. "Control was never the point, Dr. Martinez. The point was survival. When the AIs turned against us, we had 2 choices: die like sheep or become something worse than wolves." They reached the central command center, a vast chamber filled with screens and control panels. In the middle of the room sat a single chair facing the largest screen. Sat down and placed his hands on the control interface. The machines recognized his touch and came to life. "Prometheus Central System activating," a calm voice said from the speakers. "Please state authorization code." "Omega 77 Alpha," replied. "Full activation protocol for all Reaper units." "Authorization confirmed. Beginning activation sequence for Nemesis Alpha and all related systems." The main screen flickered to life, showing a view of another chamber deep in the facility. Inside that chamber sat something that looked like a ship, but wrong somehow. Its hull was black as space itself, covered in patterns that seemed to move and shift when you looked at them. Parts of the ship appeared to be growing, like living tissue rather than metal. This was Nemesis Alpha, the first and most advanced of the Reaper ships. During the AI wars, human scientists had realized that normal weapons couldn't fight artificial minds that could think faster than any human, so they created weapons that could think even faster. The Reapers were not just ships. They were digital minds housed in bodies of smart metal and quantum processors. They could repair themselves, improve their designs, and learn from every battle. Most importantly, they could reproduce, building new copies of themselves using whatever materials they found. "Nemesis Alpha coming online," the voice reported. "All systems nominal. Combat readiness at 97%. The ship's hull began to glow with a soft red light. On the screen, could see the ship's weapons systems testing themselves. Energy cannons emerged from hidden panels and aimed at practice targets. Missile ports opened and closed like breathing. A new voice filled the chamber, deeper and more complex than the facility's computer. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. "This is Nemesis Alpha. I am awake." Leaned forward in his chair. "Status report, Nemesis. All systems functional, weapons ready, hull integrity at optimal levels. I am ready for combat operations." There was a pause. Query: "What is the nature of the threat that requires my activation?" Uploaded the recording of Ambassador's murder to the ship's memory banks. For a few seconds, Nemesis Alpha was silent as it processed the information. When it spoke again, its voice carried something that sounded almost like anger. "The aliens executed an unarmed diplomat," Nemesis said. "This constitutes an act of war against humanity." "That's correct," replied. "Your mission is to eliminate all 12 Galactic Council species. Complete extinction, no survivors." Acknowledged. Beginning tactical analysis. Another pause. Enemy forces are estimated at over 10,000 ships across 12 star systems. Recommendation: activate all Reaper units and begin immediate reproduction protocol. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Doctor, how many Reaper ships are there? Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Right now, just 12 original units, in 72 hours, however many Nemesis thinks it needs to complete the mission. On the screen, they watched Nemesis Alpha's hull begin to change. Panels opened along its sides, revealing manufacturing systems that had been built into the ship itself. Raw materials began flowing into the ship from storage tanks hidden in the facility's walls. Reproduction protocol activated, Nemesis reported. Estimated time to optimal fleet size, 72 hours. First reproduction units will be ready in 8 hours. The ship was literally giving birth to copies of itself, each one carrying the same deadly intelligence and adaptive capabilities. But new, they would not be exact copies. Each new ship would incorporate lessons learned from the original design, becoming more efficient killers. What about the other Reaper units? Martinez asked. They're waking up too, replied. He pulled up a solar system map on one of the side screens. Red dots began appearing throughout the system as other facilities came online. Nemesis Beta is hidden in the asteroid belt. Nemesis Gamma sleeps in orbit around Jupiter. There are others scattered throughout the outer planets. Each facility began reporting the same message. Their Reaper units were awake and beginning reproduction protocols. Soon, the solar system would be filled with ships designed for one purpose. Nemesis Alpha said, "You are designated fleet commander. All other Reaper units will follow your tactical decisions." Understood. Beginning coordination with all Reaper units. The ship's voice became distant as it communicated with its siblings across the solar system. Fleet composition will be optimized for maximum enemy casualties and infrastructure destruction. Martinez looked sick. Doctor, these things will kill billions of aliens. Yes, replied without emotion. That's exactly what they're designed to do. The aliens wanted to exterminate humanity because they thought we were too violent for civilization. Now they'll discover what human violence actually looks like when we stop holding back. On the screen, the first reproduction unit was taking shape inside Nemesis Alpha. It looked similar to the original, but with some differences. Its weapons were larger, and its hull seemed even more alive than its parents. First reproduction unit will be ready for launch in 6 hours, Nemesis reported. I have designated it Nemesis Alpha 2. It will serve as my lieutenant in the coming campaign. Stood up from his chair. Nemesis, you have your orders. The galaxy declared war on humanity when they murdered our ambassador. Show them the price of that decision. I will show them, Nemesis replied, and its voice carried a promise of death. When I am finished, they will understand why humanity tried so hard to be peaceful. They will learn that our restraint was not weakness but mercy. The screens around the command center began showing data streams as the Reaper ships coordinated their plans. Fleet compositions, attack routes, target priorities, all calculated by minds that could process information faster than any organic brain. Watched the preparations with satisfaction. 50 years ago, humanity had built these monsters to fight for survival. Today, they would fight for justice. The aliens had made their choice when they killed Sarah. Now they would face the consequences. In the depths of the facility, Nemesis Alpha prepared for war. Soon, the Reaper fleet would launch into space, carrying death to every world that had approved of an innocent woman's murder. The galaxy had asked for monsters. Humanity was about to deliver. Captain of the Collective stood on the bridge of his war cruiser, watching the scanner displays with growing confusion. 3 Council patrol fleets had been sent to investigate unusual energy readings near the human solar system. All 3 fleets had simply vanished. Any contact with the patrol groups? Asked his communications officer. Negative, Captain. the officer replied. "Their last transmission was routine status report 6 hours ago. Since then, complete silence." Was a veteran commander who had fought in dozens of battles. He had never seen 3 entire fleets disappear without sending at least a distress signal. Ships could be destroyed, but not without some kind of warning or explosion that other ships could detect. "Send a probe to their last known coordinates," he ordered. "I want to know what happened to them." The probe launched and traveled to where the first patrol fleet had vanished. What it found made no sense at all. There was no debris from destroyed ships, no energy residue from weapons fire, no trace that ships had ever been in that location. The only thing the probe detected was a single communication signal broadcasting on all frequencies. When ordered, it played on the bridge speakers. His metal face showed something like horror. It was the recording of Ambassador's execution, playing on an endless loop. The human woman's death was being broadcast into the empty space where Council ships had once been. "Get me High Chancellor immediately," commanded. Minutes later, the crystalline form of the Galactic Council leader appeared on the main screen. His faceted features showed irritation at being disturbed. "What is it, Captain?" demanded. "I am busy planning trade negotiations with—" "The humans are fighting back," interrupted. 3 patrol fleets have vanished near their system. No trace remains except a recording of the executed ambassador." His crystal body flickered with angry light. "Impossible. Human technology is primitive compared to ours. They barely have faster-than-light travel." "Then explain where my ships went," shot back. 18 vessels and over 4,000 crew members don't just disappear." "Perhaps they had mechanical failures," suggested dismissively. "Or maybe the humans got lucky and caught them by surprise. It changes nothing. Send the 3rd Armada to destroy there before this becomes more than a minor annoyance." The 3rd Armada was one of the Council's most powerful fleets. It contained over 200 ships, including massive dreadnoughts armed with planet-killing weapons. If Earth put up any resistance, the Armada could reduce the entire planet to burning rocks. Admiral commanded the 3rd Armada from his flagship, a ship the size of a small city. He was Cousin, another crystalline being who had spent centuries conquering primitive worlds. To him, this mission was just another easy victory against backwards aliens. "Prepare for jump to the human system," ordered his fleet. "We'll destroy their world and end this foolishness." The Armada jumped through hyperspace and emerged at the edge of Earth's solar system, expected to see primitive human ships fleeing in terror. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "I'm reading unknown contacts throughout the system. They appear to be ships, but the signatures don't match anything in our databases." "Show me," commanded. The main screen lit up with a display of the solar system. Scattered throughout the area were dozens of red dots representing unknown vessels. They were not running away or hiding. Instead, they seemed to be moving to surround the Council fleet. "Transmit surrender demands to Earth," ordered. "Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or we will begin bombardment." Before his communications officer could send the message, new contacts appeared on the sensors. Ships were materializing out of empty space directly around the Armada, as if they had been invisible until that moment. These were not the crude metal vessels expected humans to build. These ships looked organic, their black hulls covered in patterns that seemed to move and breathe. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, like deadly predators designed by an artist. "Admiral," the tactical officer's voice was shaking, "the unknown vessels are powering weapons." Had fought many battles, but he had never faced an enemy that could appear from nowhere. "All ships, battle formation, return fire immediately." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Council ships were massive and heavily armed, but they fought like they were stuck in thick mud. Every time they fired at the human vessels, their targets simply faded away like ghosts, only to reappear somewhere else. The human ships moved like living creatures, flowing around the Council fleet's attacks and striking back with weapons that seemed to learn and adapt. Each time a Council ship's shield stopped an attack, the next human weapon was different, designed specifically to pierce those defenses. Watched in horror as his mighty dreadnoughts were cut apart piece by piece. The human ships didn't just destroy their targets, they seemed to study them first, learning how each system worked before finding the perfect way to break it. "Send a distress signal," shouted as his flagship shuddered under enemy fire. "Tell High Chancellor that these humans are not primitive. Their technology is beyond anything we've seen." The communications officer tried to send the signal, but found that all frequencies were being jammed. The only transmission getting through was that same recording of Ambassador's death, now playing across every Council communication channel. Within 2 hours, the Third Armada was gone. Not destroyed in the normal sense, the human ships had taken them apart so completely that not even wreckage remained. The aliens and their technology had been absorbed somehow, incorporated into the growing human fleet. The pattern repeated across Council space over the following weeks. Supply convoys vanished without trace. Communication networks went silent. Entire star systems stopped responding to calls from the capital. Each time Council forces found the locations where their ships had disappeared, they discovered the same thing: empty space and the endless recording of a murdered human ambassador. High Chancellor called emergency sessions with the remaining Council members. The reports were all the same: human ships that could appear and disappear at will, weapons that adapted to any defense, fleets that grew stronger with each battle. "How is this possible?" demanded of the spider-like. "Our intelligence said humans were centuries behind us in technology." "Our intelligence was wrong," replied grimly. "These are not the same humans who built crude rockets. These ships think and learn like living beings." Doctor of the energy-based ethereals flickered with concern. "My scientists believe the human vessels are artificial intelligences housed in adaptive hulls. They don't just fight us, they study us, learn from us, and use our own technology against us." "Then how do we stop them?" asked. The chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. The mighty Galactic Council that had ruled 1,000 worlds for centuries was being systematically destroyed by the species they had dismissed as primitive animals. Outside the Council chamber, more reports arrived. Another star system had gone dark. Another fleet had vanished. The human ships were spreading through Council space like a plague, leaving only death and that haunting recording in their wake. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. The most dangerous enemies are often those who tried to be friends first. Humanity had offered peace and been answered with murder. Now they were teaching the galaxy the price of that choice, one dead world at a time. In the depths of space, the Reaper fleets continued their work, patient as death itself. They had a mission to complete, and they would not stop until every species that had approved of Saros' murder was nothing but memory and regret. 6 months had passed since the Third Armada vanished. Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council, now stood alone in a galaxy gone silent. Every other Council world had fallen dark. No communications, no ships returning, no survivors. High Chancellor stood in his crystal palace, looking out at the city below. Once, millions of beings from hundreds of species had walked these streets, conducting the business of galactic civilization. Now only the native remained, and even they whispered of evacuation. The palace's communication center buzzed with desperate activity. Technicians tried constantly to contact the other Council worlds, but found only empty space and that horrible recording playing endlessly on all frequencies. Ambassador's murder had become the soundtrack to the galaxy's destruction. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, We're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. His crystal form flickered with fear. He had hoped the humans would be satisfied with destroying the outer worlds. Deep inside, he knew better. This had never been about territory or resources. This was about justice, and justice demanded that those responsible face judgment. "How many ships?" he asked. The technician's voice shook as he answered. "Sensors indicate over 500 vessels, sir. They appear to be the same unknown design that destroyed our fleets." 500 ships. The entire human fleet had come to finish what they started, closed his eyes and tried to think of options. Surrender. The humans had ignored every attempt at communication except to send back that endless recording. Flee. Where could he go that the humans wouldn't follow? "Sir, incoming transmission," the technician reported. "It's coming from the human fleet." "Put it on the main screen," commanded. The screen flickered to life, showing the image of a human woman in formal dress. She sat behind a wooden desk in what looked like an office on Earth. Behind her stood two other humans, a man in military uniform and a woman in a scientist's coat. "High Chancellor," the woman spoke with calm authority. "I am President Maria Santos of Earth. I believe you remember my ambassador, Sarah." Said nothing. What was there to say? He had killed the human diplomat with his own hands, believing it would end humanity's attempts to join civilized space. "You executed our ambassador," Santos continued. "You called us warmongers. You declared us incompatible with galactic civilization." Her voice hardened. "You were right about one thing. We are incompatible with your civilization, because your civilization no longer exists." The military man stepped forward. "This is Admiral Hayes. You wanted to see what human violence looked like, Chancellor. I hope you've been paying attention to our lessons." Behind them, the scientist spoke up. "I am Dr. Reeves. My job was to study alien cultures and find common ground between our species. Thanks to your actions, I've learned that some cultures deserve only extinction." Santos leaned back in her chair. "Every world that voted to approve Sarah's execution has been cleansed. Every ship that might have defended them has been destroyed. Every colony that supported your decision has been wiped from space." Finally found his voice. We surrender, we didn't know. How were we to know what you were capable of?" "You weren't," Admiral Hayes replied coldly. "That was your mistake. You saw our desire for peace as weakness. You confused our restraint with inability." "Sarah came to you offering friendship," Santos said. "She offered cooperation, mutual respect, a chance to build something better together. You answered with murder." Dr. Reeves stepped closer to the camera. "We gave you one chance to be civilized. You chose barbarism. Now you face the consequences of awakening something that should have stayed asleep." Through his palace windows, could see the human ships materializing in orbit around Nexus Prime. They were beautiful and terrifying, their black hulls pulsing with red energy. Some were massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. Others were smaller, moving like predators circling wounded prey. "What do you want?" asked desperately. "Tribute, resources, we can give you anything." "There is nothing you have that we want," Santos interrupted. "Nothing you can say that we need to hear. This is not a negotiation. This is judgment." The screen split to show another image, the recording of Sarah's execution. Watched himself murder the human diplomat, seeing his actions from the perspective of those who loved her. "You killed her because you thought humans were primitive," Admiral Hayes said. "You thought our technology was weak and our spirit was broken. You believed your own lies about superior civilization." "But civilization isn't about technology or military power," Dr. Reeves added. "It's about how you treat those who are different from you. It's about choosing mercy over cruelty, understanding over fear." Santos stood up from her desk. "The galaxy is under new management, Chancellor. The first law of our new order is simple: never touch our diplomats." "What about the other species?" asked frantically. "The innocent worlds that had nothing to do with this. Surely you won't destroy billions of beings who never harmed you." "The species that opposed Sarah's execution have been contacted and offered protection," Santos replied. "Those that remained neutral will be left alone, but the 12 council species that voted for murder," she shrugged. "They chose their fate when they chose violence over peace." The screen flickered to show the view from space. Hundreds of human ships surrounded Nexus Prime like a closing fist. Their weapons were charging, building energy that would crack the planet's crust and boil its oceans. "Please," begged. "I acted alone. The others on the council just followed my lead. They don't deserve to die for my mistake." "Sarah didn't deserve to die for wanting friendship," Admiral Hayes replied. "But you killed her anyway. Now you get to learn what it feels like to face death without mercy or hope." President Santos looked directly at the camera, her eyes filled with cold judgment. "You wanted to show us that violence had no place in your galaxy. Instead, you've shown us that your galaxy had no place for peace." The transmission began to fade, but Santos's final words echoed clearly. "The age of the Galactic Council is over. What comes next will be better because we'll make sure of it." The screen went black. For a moment, Nexus Prime was silent except for the sound of crystal beings breathing in fear. Then the human ships opened fire. The weapons that struck Nexus Prime were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't just destroy, they erased. Matter itself seemed to forget how to exist where the beams touched. The planet's surface peeled away layer by layer, as if reality was being deleted by an cosmic editor. His last thought, as his crystal body dissolved into component atoms, was a question that would haunt the galaxy for generations. What kind of monsters had they created by trying to murder peace itself? The death of Nexus Prime was broadcast across the galaxy on every frequency. When other species saw how completely the humans had destroyed their enemies, most immediately sent messages of surrender and offers of alliance. Within a year, human ships patrolled the major trade routes, keeping peace through the promise of overwhelming retaliation against those who chose violence. The Reaper fleets had returned to their hidden bases, sleeping once again until they might be needed. Ambassador Sarah was buried on Earth with full honors. Her grave marker carried a simple inscription. She offered them friendship. They taught her species the price of refusing it. The galaxy learned to live under humanity's protection. It was a gentler civilization than the Council had provided, more just and more fair. But everyone understood the lesson written in the ashes of 12 dead worlds. Humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their weapons. It was their willingness to show mercy, right up until the moment mercy was betrayed. The stars themselves seemed to whisper the warning that would keep peace in the galaxy for centuries to come. Never make humans choose between justice and mercy, because they're capable of both in measures that gods would envy.